It's always, as I've mentioned before, I usually do the Father's Day message, and Dad does the Mother's Day message. And it's always difficult to, decide. Of course, it's Father's Day, so we're going to talk about fathers and dads, But it's like, what do you want to say about them? You want to give them advice? I always feel a little uncomfortable doing that because I'm a woman and I do have advice that I think they can listen to, but I don't know that it would always be appreciated. But anyway, now I can talk about how great fathers are, so that's always appreciated, right? Anyway, Father's Day, I might do a little bit of both today. Father's Day started in America actually in 1909. And Sonora Dodd, she was actually celebrating Mother's Day, and she thought, a light bulb moment might be a good idea to celebrate fathers and have a Father's Day. And then, of course, in 1972, President Nixon actually signed it into law, making it a permanent holiday in the U.S. on the third Sunday in June. But we can look back and see that God told us to honor our fathers and mothers way back in the good old-fashioned Ten Commandments. So we were told a long, long time ago to honor our fathers. So we don't need a day to do it, but it is nice. It's kind of like Valentine's Day. Sometimes I hear people gripe and say, it's just a commercial holiday made up by the greeting card company. Who needs, Valentine's Day to celebrate? Well, unfortunately, sometimes we need a specific day on the calendar to say, hey, if you haven't done it all year long, this is a day to remind someone that you love them or you honor them or celebrate them or something like that. Mark Twain, he said this about his father. I thought this was kind of funny. He said, when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to 21, I was astonished how much he had learned in 7 years. Anyway. All right. Hopefully everyone got that. So, Genesis 18:19. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. So we see there a very important charge being given for Abraham to keep his household in the admonishment of the Lord. And so I'm going to share today 8 things a godly father does. And then I'm going to sum that up with 3 more things and then 3 examples. That's why I said I had a lot of material, so I'll try to cut through it. All right, so first thing a godly father does is lights the way. So a father, and I think we can all kind of agree with that. A father is supposed to be the one in the family primarily. Now, of course, the mother is supposed to be doing that too, but God commands the father to light the way for his family, to bring in scripture, to make sure the household is running according to the Bible and that they're following the path that Jesus has set before them. And so the first thing is lighting the way. Love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength in Deuteronomy 6:5. And then we're going to continue on with that in 6 through 9. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. That's not the little things that the Jews over there in Jerusalem are doing. If you know what I'm talking about. If not, just ask me after. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. So basically, God is commanding fathers there. You're supposed to be talking about godly things with your children all the time. And not just when they're little. You're supposed to continue when they're older too. Just because kids are older or grown up or teenagers or even married or whatever, they're still your children. They need to listen to daddy. You should always be there continuing to guide them and giving them wise instruction. Be there to help clarify things that perhaps they don't understand. And this deal about, all the day, night and day, and when you're walking along the path, sometimes, I've seen, Lord, will you put that down? A little side instruction there. Thank you. My grandson was getting in my purse. All right. Anyway, so, this idea about all time, all day, all night, walking down the road and so forth, what that really implies is that, there's always a teachable moment. I know some families will have a dedicated time each day for family Bible study or family prayer or things like that. And, that's all fine and good. Not every family functions the same way. But you really should never let any time pass throughout the day when you can't find a teachable moment. I know with my own children, whether it was making breakfast, making beds, doing chores, walking down the road, swimming, the same with, Scott and our kids and stuff. There's always a time that you can use whatever it is. You got a wasp. You're going to smash the wasp. You don't want to get stung. I don't know. Talk about the wasp. Why did God make a wasp? I don't really know, but he must have had a very good reason for it. And then we can talk about, the fact that God is in control. There's always something in some way that we can lead and direct the conversation with our children into something that's godly and into something that can be a teachable moment. And so as fathers in Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, I do want to remind people that this is not an actual promise. Some people get very upset. They may see a very godly family, and maybe perhaps one of the children grew up and just turned out to be kind of a wicked person, and they kind of look at the parents and they're like, wow, you sure were a pretty big failure, weren't you? The Proverbs are wise sayings. They're not necessarily always promises. But this is good advice that if you do diligently work to train up your child, for the most part, they're gonna follow your path. They're gonna follow your teachings. And part of that training up, it's not just, do this and do that. You're training them by, basically it's like apprenticeship, In the old days, a young boy might go and he'd be apprenticed out maybe as a typesetter at a printing office, or perhaps learning some sort of trade, blacksmithing, or maybe the legal profession. All types of things that people would be apprenticed out to. Maybe a young girl to a seamstress or something like that. And so it's this every day, all the time, training where you're continually learning, not a craft, but you're continually learning about God and about what he has in store for your life and what your mission in life is. The New Testament says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. It's Ephesians 6:4. So again, we see there this training and admonition that we're continually to work and focus on our children. And it's difficult sometimes because I know not everybody out there has children. Some people will never marry. Some people perhaps may have lost children. Maybe they tried to have children. Whatever. As I said, each individual and family is different. But nevertheless, whether you have children or not, these are things that, we need to keep in mind in our life. Because whether or not we're training a child, we're supposed to train other people, So we can lead by example. We can help train our friends, maybe on the job or friends that people we come into association with. We can be there to be a guide, to be a light to them, and to help train them and bring them closer to God. And also, do not provoke your children to wrath. This is something interesting that I know sometimes people have difficulty with. But now here's a comment I have from one gentleman. He's talking about the difference between discipline and punishment. And this man, he said, my father was pretty heavy on the punishment. Punishment causes rebellion. Discipline draws you closer together. Punishment is spoken in anger and harshly. Discipline is usually spoken kindly and lovingly. Punishment produces a bitter, poisonous fruit. Discipline produces the fruit of acting in the right way or righteousness. Fathers, you need to learn the difference in discipline between discipline and not to discipline and not to punish. And so I wrote a note here to myself, no, this is not true. That all sounded really good. This was by a pastor at a Father's Day conference talking to pastors. It all sounds really nice and good. You don't want to provoke your children. You don't want to, yell and get all mean, and you don't want to hit them, in anger or things like that. But actually, if we look through the Bible, discipline is the way you organize something. It's the discipline you have to get up in the morning. It's the discipline you have to make your bed. It's the discipline you have to carry out the things you're told to do, your chores, whatever. It's your strategy, your day-to-day strategy is discipline. And people often get this confused. Punishment is chastisement. You can look from the first page of the Bible all the way through the end, and you're going to see God punishing his people. And did Israel and Judah often get rebellious? Yes, they did. They didn't like to be punished. Do children get rebellious sometimes when we punish them? Yes, they do. That's the way it goes. Punishment is something that we're commanded to do. Children need to be punished. Our nation is under punishment now. Israel was under punishment and is still under punishment. If you endure chastising or punishment as God deals with you and as God deals with you as sons, then, the Bible says that, for what a son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons. Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Hebrews 12:6-11. So again, we see, we have to be careful sometimes that we, pay attention sometimes to what sounds like good advice and look and see if it's scriptural. Secondly, a father is a leader. I already mentioned this verse, but we'll say it again. For I've chosen him so that he will direct his children and his father or his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. So as I mentioned previously, a father is going to lead by example. The kids watch you all the time. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not a good thing. So it's important, that as fathers that we remember, as parents in general, that we remember that kids watch us, they listen to us. Sometimes they misconstrue things. But they're there nevertheless, like little flies on the wall, watching your every move. And they see and they understand your character and they understand what type of person you are. And that will help them either to develop in a positive way or develop in a negative way. And so being a leader, God has called the men of our people to be leaders in their family, to lead their children, to lead their household. And it's important for them to remember that, sometimes that's very difficult, but it's something that they're commanded to do, and it's integral to a healthy family dynamic. A father leads by example most of all. Here's one example of Joshua. And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. And so you might have seen a lot of different Christian homes. I know we have this on our home, on our front door, the little door knocker. And it says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's an example that fathers give to their children. And the men of our race give to those who are watching them. As I said, whether or not you have children, the children in this church are watching you. Whether you have a familial relationship with them or not, they're watching you. They're watching you as little boys and little girls watching, the men of this church and how they conduct themselves and talk and speak and the language they use and the things that interest them and so forth. And so you're always being watched. I kind of already discussed this one, but this was my third point. Godly fathers discipline, or rather, they do punish. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father the son in whom he delights. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens and scourges every son whom he receives. So again, you don't want to, I think all intelligent beings here know the difference between, a sound punishment and just, you're beating your kid or something like that. But unfortunately, some people out there, they don't really understand the difference. I'm thankful that we have people in this church and for the most part that are watching us that do understand the difference and so forth. But, just kind of watch yourself when you are punishing or chastening your children, that you connect some compassion with that. And I think this is what this preacher was really trying to make the point before when he talked about the difference between discipline and punishment, because, punishment and discipline, whatever, way you view it, you have to have compassion. It can't just be because you're mad because, your kid got mud all over your new sofa or wrecked the windshield wiper in your new car or something like that. It has to be a good, biblical-based punishment, and it has to be connected with compassion because, we understand that your job as a father is to chasten that child, to help bring them back to righteousness, to help put them on a right path, to understand the difference between right and wrong. And so, sometimes it hurts and it pains you to, give that rod of correction and give that spanking to that child and so forth. But you do it because you have compassion, because you deeply and terribly love your child and you want them to grow up on a straight and narrow path. The psalmist, he said, as a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him. For he knows our frame, he remembers that we are dust. Psalms 103. So again, we need to have that compassion and we need to have that pity for our children. Fifthly, a godly father is there for you. So he's not an absentee father. He doesn't think, one more hour of work is going to make, sometimes, dads have to work overtime and things like that. I remember a story that Jason told here a few years ago about, because Jason's an attorney, Pastor Rob's son, my brother. He's an attorney here in the area. And there was some sort of a custody case or something like that. And so he was asking the father, what's the name of your child's teacher? What's the name of, your child's friends? What are his favorite colors? What are his favorite things? This kind of stuff like that. And the father didn't really have an answer to any of these questions. But then he asked him, some car-related deal. Mustang 66, my favorite car. He knew all the sports, he knew all the numbers, he knew all the cars, didn't know anything about his kid. And so fathers have to be careful that they don't put their hobbies over and above spending time with their kids. Maybe include your children in your hobbies. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby. There's nothing wrong with, having some me time and so forth. But children really crave that attention and that relationship with their dad. I know sometimes we look at men and they're all manly and we don't see that, tender, soft part of them. And yet it's there. And children want to be a part of that. They want to have that extra attention. They, sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm not just the affectionate type. Well, get over it. Become an affectionate person. Become an affectionate parent. Hug your children. Kiss your children. Cuddle with your children. Not just moms, but dads too. You have to be there for your children. They're going to know, perhaps if you have a child who's punished and they become very rebellious, perhaps it's because they're not getting that other part of you. They need that love and attention, and then that punishment will be a little bit easier to take. 6, the godly father provides for his children. He may not provide all their wants or desires, but he does provide their needs. And again, we are in an economic state in this country in which, unfortunately, for the most part, this is a two-income nation. It takes moms and dads both bringing in a paycheck. And again, every family's different, but for the most part, and this is the way it was when I was growing up, my father was a full-time pastor, but the church didn't provide enough, as it should for ministers sometimes. My mom went out and she had to work and help bring in a paycheck and so forth. And so we can't always look at families where either the dad's a stay-at-home dad, he has an office at the house or something like that, or maybe the mom works. Sometimes I feel, sometimes we get a little bit too self-righteous. I know I homeschooled my children. I know a lot of the parents in this church also homeschool their children. But I don't want anyone, whether here or listening to us on the internet, to ever think that somehow we feel that if your children go to public school or if the wife works or something like that, we're not looking down on you. It's not the best ideal situation, but we're not living in an ideal nation. We're not living in the best of situations in this country. And so families have to figure out their own ground rules, keeping it within a biblical structure. And so fathers who, I know some men I've talked to, they feel very depressed and very down that they can't bring home the paycheck that they need to be able to pay the mortgage and pay the car and to take the kids to the dentist or to the doctor or buy some little trinket that might make their little child extra happy or something like that. They can't provide all those things. And so I don't want people out there to ever think that somehow you are not fulfilling your role as a father because your wife has to work or because your children are in public school. We do tell people whose children are in public school it's not the ideal situation, but I'll tell you what, homeschooling is not even the ideal situation. Homeschooling your children is very, very difficult because you don't necessarily have the same type of structure that they do in an everyday school setting. Now, personally, I like that because it was like I mentioned about children being apprenticed out. I find that homeschooling in an unstructured setting is the best way to apprentice children and to teach them and educate them in godly things and so forth. But it also has its own issues and downs and so forth. And one of those, especially for children who are in white racialist observant families, sometimes it can make you a little bit complacent. Maybe you don't quite understand. Maybe you don't quite have the same compassion for other families who are in the public school system, who have to put up with the bullying and the anti-white propaganda and stuff like that. So just a little side point there about let's not be too self-righteous and think we have the ideal family because our wife doesn't work or because we homeschool or whatever the case may be. And if you're in any of those situations and you can't do everything that you think is ideal, you keep your children on the path. That's why you talk to them all the time. Me and Jason and my other brother Nathan, we all went to public school. Now it was in a white rural area. I know my parents didn't like the fact that we had to go to public school, but it really wasn't in the cards at that time for us to be homeschooled. But I tell you what, I actually don't think that I would have preferred to have been homeschooled at that time because it kind of like gave me another idea of what families out there go through. I saw the propaganda. I didn't get sucked into it. I think that's what we try to tell people, and the advice that's given to fathers a lot of times when they say, they call Pastor Rob or Jason and say, I just wish we could homeschool our children. We can't find a way to do it. And if you can't, then the advice is you better stick like molasses to your kids. Going to public school and being in the enemy's camp doesn't have to be detrimental, but if you're an absentee dad and you're not looking at their textbooks, finding out what they're talking about at school, if they're not learning their proper relationship with Christ and learning their identity as God's covenant people, if they don't know these things, and I don't just mean know them from a educational factor, but if they don't have them like deep down buried in their heart and soul, then they may get sucked into the propaganda. That's why your role as a father is just so vitally critical, that you make these things just a part of their everyday life. It just has to be. So like if you have a hobby, if you want a hobby, make White Christian Revival your hobby. I mean, that's what my mom and dad did. That was our, going to the boat show? No, it was, do something for God, do something for America, do something for our people. That was our family hobby, and it wasn't a hobby, it was a mission. So, okay, and then the 8th thing is integrity. That's the 8th thing that I think is very vital for fathers to have, and something that's really just missing among the general population. In 1991, there was a book written called The Day America Told the Truth. And they asked thousands of people across all socioeconomic brackets, different parts of the country and everything. They asked, what are you willing to do for $10 million? And 2/3 of those polled, here are some of the following. 25% said that they would abandon their entire family. This is for $10 million. 25% said that they would abandon their church. 23% said they would become a prostitute for a week. 16% said they would give up their American citizenship. 16% said they would leave their spouse. 10% said they would withhold testimony and let a murderer go free. 7% would kill a stranger. And 3% would put their children up for adoption. A total lack of integrity. I mean, I read that and I was like, really? Just mind-boggling. And that was 30 years ago, 1991, roughly 30 years ago. Can you imagine what those numbers might be now? Integrity is something that unfortunately is becoming more rare all the time. Integrity is described or defined in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary as incorruptibility, soundness, and or completeness. And its primary synonym is honesty. So integrity means incorruptibility. He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will be found out. Proverbs 10:9. So we see that integrity means that there's a certain way that you walk. There's a certain character that you have. You walk on good ground. You stand upright. Kind of like when they used to say, we don't need a contract. A man's handshake is his word. Do we have that type of integrity among our population anymore? Also, integrity means completeness. So the second verse there, Proverbs 2:7, He, or God, stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. So how can, what is integrity and being complete? What does that really, Colossians 2:10 says that if you have Jesus Christ, then you are complete. So how can you really say, we see politicians get up all the time and they say, I'm a man of integrity, but, they're hardly walking a Christian life. How can you be a person of integrity if you're not complete? Colossians says you're complete when you have Christ. And if you don't have Christ, how can you be a person of integrity? A righteous man who walks in his integrity, how blessed are his sons after him. So, Proverbs 27. So, what that tells me is that integrity is something that can be modeled and transmitted. Integrity is something that you can transmit to your children. It's something that you can pass to them, that you can give to them. Again, those without children, they're watching you anyway. They watch to see if you're a man of your word. They watch to see if you're a person committed to Christ. They watch to see if you're committed to your people, if you're committed to your church, what type of person you are. Are you a person of integrity? Chuck Swindoll, he wrote a book called Living Above the Level of Mediocrity. I pronounced that right. He said, the world needs men who cannot be bought, whose word is their bond, who put character above wealth, who possesses opinions and a will, who are larger than their vocations, who do not hesitate to take chances, who will not lose their individuality in a crowd, who will be as honest in small things as in great things, who will make no compromises with wrong, whose ambitions are not confined to their own selfish desires, who will not say they do it because everyone else does it, who are true to their friends through good report and evil report, in adversity as well as in prosperity, who do not believe that shrewdness, cunning, and hard-headedness are the best qualities for winning success, who are not ashamed or afraid to stand for the truth when it is unpopular, who can say no with emphasis, although all the rest of the world says yes. And one more thing, the world needs men with integrity, Swindoll said, the integrity found in Christ. And so we have to think as fathers grow and mature, and mothers too, what kind of legacy are you leaving to your children? When your children are off and gone and married, they're not going to say, oh, do you remember that one Tuesday when Dad worked 2 extra hours at the office? Or you remember that Wednesday afternoon when Dad left work early and went fishing but skipped my ball game at school? Or they're not going to remember all these they're going to remember the things that you do with them. They're going to remember the things you do for them. They're going to remember the things that you've taught them and how you relate to them. So I see I'm right on the dot up there. Give me about 10 minutes here. So I've got three individuals with different, I believe, there's three people here that I'm going to discuss. My husband, Scott, my father, and someone that most people may not think of, but Don Black. As examples of people that I think have integrity and can be looked up to as fathers, and I'm going to explain why rather quickly. First, my husband, Scott. We got married when we were very young. I was 19. He was, 20, 21, something like that. As older folks would say, just stupid kids at the time. So we've kind of like grown up together as a married couple. We fight a lot over the most mundane, idiotic, stupid little things. We're both type A personalities. I'm still learning how to bite my tongue, and he's still learning to have some more patience. But we're best friends, and we love each other deeply, and that's what I hope that our children learn from us, is that, I see some households, and they just want it to be like heaven on earth and harmony all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's also nothing wrong with knowing that people bicker, and, you might see the couple that's been married for 50 or 60 years, and they go down the highway and they're bickering at each other. But if one of them was to pass away, it would be like the death of them also, because they're best friends, and kids need to learn to see that people can fight and argue and have disagreements and still love each other and still be there. And part of that is because if you grow up in a Christian household and you know that marriage is forever, marriage is forever, then you don't have to worry about, we have an argument or this, or mom or dad are fighting or whatever. It's like, okay, but they love each other. They're not going anywhere. They love us. They love each other. We work through this, and we get on with our life. Scott is, to me, one of the most humble people I've ever met. I do public speaking. He's never once got upset about it. He doesn't feel less manly because he's running the video cameras or something. He gives me great advice and great counsel. He's not jealous. I know some guys can be jealous if they feel a woman is not duly called to speak. That's another subject. But Scott is humble, and he's just a great father and a great husband. And he's been great at working a literally back-breaking job so that I could be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool our children. That we could watch out for their moral progress. That's very difficult for girls in public school system, even more than boys. It's really a dangerous place for young girls. And having 2 daughters, we thought it best that they do be homeschooled. So that meant living on a smaller paycheck, trying to make ends meet, try to figure out how to pay the mortgage, all those things. A lot of headaches, but Scott never missed work. He never was late. He was just a great father and a great example to them. And I hope that they will all remember that. And then my dad, as I mentioned, full-time minister. The church doesn't always properly compensate preachers, especially in small congregations. And so my mom had to work, but it was a decision they came to together. We all realized that it was a sacrifice that my mom was making. It wasn't that she was out there having a big flashy career, jet setting around the country and having her assistant make the phone calls for her. She worked a difficult job, and yet we recognized the dignity of her and respect that she deserved. And we went to public school, and my dad kept us all together as a family. And in all his travels and being there to guide us. And I know he always, wished maybe different things had happened differently, but we were on a mission as a family. And that's what I think is important for families today and for fathers. If you think of your family as a corporation and the dad is the CEO of the corporation, then what I ask you is your mission statement. What is your mission statement? What is your family about? Is it just about go to church, be good girls and boys, have a nice life? Nothing wrong with that. Make sure you're baptized so you can get to heaven someday. Okay, that's unfortunately what a lot of Christian families think. But we have to understand, in the time of Jacob's trouble, what is your mission statement? What are the goals of your family? Sit your family down and discuss your goals as a family. Is it just to be good and righteous? Or is it to complete a mission? Because God has called each of us on a mission. And so we need to remember that. And my dad always had us on a mission. Me and my brothers, we knew our mission. We knew the direction we were taking in life. We knew what we had to do to get there, the goals we had to set. We knew all this. And so my dad's just a great example of a man of integrity and just long-lasting commitment to God and family. And then I mentioned Don Black, and I know some people here may not know who he is. Some people watching may. And I put Don Black down as a person of integrity and a worthy example as a father. And some people may say, what, Don Black? Everybody around the world knows about his son Derek. His only son that they homeschooled and loved and cherished and taught well, and then he went off to some liberal college, drained the bank account, went on a speaking tour and put an op-ed piece in the Southern Poverty Law Center against his father and his beliefs. And you think, how can you hold Don Black up as a example of a good father, or as an example of a man of integrity? And I hold him up because of that, because of the very fact that, can you imagine your only child doing that to you and doing that to your beliefs and your family and dragging your name through the mud and turning your back on everything you've taught them? And yet, Don Black hasn't caved one red cent. He hasn't caved at all. He still loves his son, but he hasn't caved. My husband Scott, after we were first married, his parents were divorced when he was a child, and his father remarried a woman whose daughter was married to a black guy. They had black children, and within just a few short weeks of this marriage, it became very clear and evident to Scott that his father was going to be having black grandkids around. And I never discussed it, asked him, or suggested. Scott made the decision on his own that if his father was going to put our family in the danger of being in some sort of interracial, social, and family setting, then that was the end of it. He hasn't spoken to his father since. That's been almost 30 years. Some Christians would be like, because she's supposedly a good Christian lady, some Christians would be like, what? How could you do that? Not speak to your father or cut a family tie like that. And sometimes that's just what has to be done in order to keep the integrity of your family in check. And so I put Don Black as a person who I've known since I was a little girl. He stayed his course. He is a man of integrity and word, and he is a humble person. And so while he's lost his son, I think he deserves the admiration and respect of all the white children out there. And so I will close with that. As I said, I love the institution of fatherhood. Hopefully I did not give too much advice that you did not appreciate. Hopefully I kind of coupled that together with the fact that, fathers have a powerful role to play. And as Jason mentioned before, the patriarchy or the institution of fatherhood and what all it implies of love and care and protection for women and children and families and nation and so forth, it is under attack. And so I'd just like to close today by saying, that we love all of our fathers out there. We love and respect the men of our race, and that we hold you up in the highest regard and in prayer, and continually pray that you will uphold this nation and our God and our people in your hearts, and make that part of your mission in your life and a part of the mission for your families and for those who look up to you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just come to you today, and we just humbly ask that you will guide and care and love and continue to be there for each and every one of us. That you will help us to complete our mission, to find our mission, to know what it is that you would have us do in this life, that we will love you and try to be the son or daughter that you've asked us to be, that you will just be there for our families. We ask you on this special day of recognition for fathers and for fatherhood, that you will just help give the men of our race enduring courage, that you will help give them the wisdom that they need to stay strong in this battle for the hearts and souls of our people, and that you will be there as a father to them, just as they will be a father to future generations of our white children. We ask this all in your precious and holy name. Amen.
There's no secret what God can do. There is no night, for in God's light you'll never walk alone. Always feel at home wherever you may roam. There is no power can conquer you while God is on your side. Just take him at his promise. Don't run away and hide. It is no secret what God can do. What he's done for others, he'll do for you. God can do.